All right, boys, good afternoon. Today is Sunday, July 17th, 2011. Here's a couple points and notes that you need to be familiar with going into tomorrow's practice. First of all, make sure we always bring that wetsuit attitude towards everything we do. We're going to eat this stuff up. We're going to work hard, run to the ball, communicate, and be aggressive on defense. And today our focus of this little presentation is about the outside linebackers. Note that our outside linebackers are called the Bear and the Joker. Two guys who line up in what are called outside linebacker techniques. And one of the techniques you might play is what is called the walkaway technique. A walkaway means lined up at a position approximately 5 yards outside the ball and some 4 yards off the ball. So you're 5 by 4, 5 out, and approximately 4 off in a 2-point stance looking back towards the ball. Now this can be adjusted, sometimes wider, sometimes tighter, but that's a good approximation for where you'd like you to line up. To be the outside linebacker in this walkaway position, you need to be in a balanced 2-point stance. When the huddle breaks, wait near the football, wait till a strength call is made, and then echo what you hear and align to the proper side. No point in lining up on this side if you're the Bear, and you're going to actually have to play over on this side. So just wait near the ball as the offense breaks the huddle. In our defense, the Bear always goes to the call side. The Joker always goes away from the call side. Your arms should be relaxed, ready to run, and you're going to have to get a pass or run read to tell you what you're going to do next. So in the walkaway, those are our coaching points. And here you see a diagram, or actually a photograph of a defense, a 3-5 defense, which illustrates the walkaway position for these linebackers. Now, important to understand that your focus oftentimes is going to be back through the ball, so you have a line of sight initially looking back for a pass or run read. If you're a 9 technique, a 9 technique is going to line up on the tight end in a position as illustrated by these points of emphasis, playing the outside shoulder of the tight end. Have your inside foot splitting the crotch of the tight end, meaning if this is the football, and this is the tight end, and this is his inside foot, and that's his outside foot, and you're what we call the Bear linebacker. In this case, your left foot would be right between his 2 feet, and your right foot would be outside of it. You're a gap player. You're responsible for the D gap, which is the outside shoulder of the tight end. And so it's very important that your initial alignment be correct in the right spot. You need to have your hands ready to press and grab the tight end. In this case, you're going to have your helmet at the same height of the tight end. Don't be tall. Play with Z's in the knees. Have a short step and fast hands, and then grab cloth. Grab the shirt of the tight end and steer him in the direction that you want to. And pre-snap, look at the tight end. Focus right on the man in front of you. Do not look inside the box to find the football. You'll have a tough time then refocusing back into the tight end. So pre-snap, focus directly on your tight end and move when he moves. Here's a nice 9 technique alignment. Here you see his eyes are focused on the tight end. He's got Z's in the knees. He's ready to step and press and grab. And as he does, again, his arms are going to extend. He's going to be thumbs up, elbows in, grabbing the outside shoulder of the tight end. Right there. So let's talk about pass drops here. We're going to ask you to use an angle run to drop to a zone or to a man. So if this is the football, this is the tight end, and let's say you're this particular linebacker, oftentimes you're going to be the flat player. And the way you're going to run is you're going to open up your hips, and you're going to use what we call an angle run technique to get back to your zone. So your feet are going to move in that particular way. You're going to open up your hips, step, crossover, step, crossover, step, crossover until you get to your assigned zone. I have some tape, but it's not showing up on this. So I'll show this to you or send it to you some other time. Let's take a look at what a pass drop is. Pass drop is your responsibility after you get a pass read, and your particular drop that you do follow will be based upon the coverage that it's called. Our coverages are indicated by numbers, 0, 1, 2, or 3, and we'll explain to you what that means, but you need to know where you belong on each of those 3 pass coverages. Here's a brief overview, and you may want to pause this presentation at some point to give a detailed look at this, but if we play cover 0, this is man-to-man with no free safety. And if you're the Bear or the Joker, you're playing man-to-man in number 2. And again, if there is no number 2 player to your side, you play the flat, and we'll explain to you what the number 2 receiver can be identified as. If it's cover 1, we're playing man-to-man, but that's with a free safety. Cover 2 is a 2 deep with 5 or 6 under zone. And we're going to play what's called hook to curl, reading number 2 to number 1. And if it's a number 3, cover 3, then you are a flat to out player. And again, information to follow on that. So let's look at the coverages. This is a cover 0. Again, cover 0 is a man-to-man with no free safety, sometimes used with a blitzing corner, or sometimes used with a blitzing free safety. So there's a couple of variations we can play, but it is man-to-man defense. So you can see here's the different assignments to the different linebackers. If you're a Mike or Sam linebacker, you ought to look at this too. The will linebacker has responsibility, but we're focusing on this particular presentation and what we're calling the bear and the joker. So if you're the bear, you play man-to-man in number 2. If there is no number 2, be the edge player and play the flat on the pass. So the flat is this area over here, which we'll show you in a diagram in a minute. These are the flat portions of the football field, roughly from the hash out towards the sideline. So in cover 0 for the bear and joker, again, you have number 2 man-to-man. And again, here you see it summarized for you at the bottom. Here's cover 1. Cover 1 is man-free. In this case, everyone's playing man-to-man except the free safety, who is going to be the center fielder, so to speak. He stays over the top of all passes, and we're going to man up underneath. And then again, in this case, you see the bear and the joker have number 2 strong or number 2 weak based upon which player you are. Again, if you don't have a number 2, be the edge player, meaning the guy who seals the edge here, and play the flat to the out, which we'll talk again a little bit about in a minute here. Cover 2 is coverage we may play some of. In number 2, you can see the joker now is going to drop back off the football and become a deep half player. He's got deep half responsibilities to his side of the football. So if we broke the field in half, the joker in this case has a deep half of the field. No one should be behind him, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The bear in this case reads hook to curl. He's concerned about the hook to the curl route, and again dropping to a zone using the angle run that we talked about. Cover 3 is our 3 deep zone, and in this case you can see the bear and joker both play the flat to the out. They're concerned about this portion of the football field over here. And the corner is a deep third player, the free is a deep third player, and the corner is a deep third player on his side. Importantly, how are we going to number these eligible receivers? Let's take a look and see. When we tell you have number 1, number 2, or number 3, how do you identify who that is? So here's some examples. As the offense sets up a bit of formation, we can divide the field in half. And the first receiver to the far left is number 1. The second receiver to the far left is number 2. The third receiver to the far left is number 3. Then you go to the right-hand side. First receiver in is number 1. The second receiver in is number 2. In this case, you can see you have 3 receivers to the left, but only 2 receivers to the right. It's what we would call, and you'll hear this term mentioned, this would be 2 by 2 because they have 2 wide receivers here, and they have 2 wide receivers over here with a single back. Thinking really there's 5 eligible receivers, 6 if you count the quarterback. But this is a 2 by 2 alignment here. 2 by 2 because we're saying there's 2 wide vertical threats here and there's 2 wide vertical threats here also. Here you see a situation in which this is really 1 by 3 as we look at the screen. And again, if we look at this, here's the number 1 receiver to the right, number 2 receiver to the right, number 3 receiver to the right. The 4th eligible receiver is to the right-hand side of the football, so there's 4 eligible receivers to the right. You could argue it's 1 by 4, but really there's 3 vertical threats here by the people outside the box. And then here's the number 1 receiver to the left. So in contrast to the last slide, if you look to the left, there's only 1 eligible receiver to the left-hand side of the football. And if we got to look like this, we'd make some adjustments that we can talk about a little later. Again, number of receivers, here's number 1, number 2 to the left, number 1 and 2 to the right, and then the single back would be number 3 over here. Again, here's eligible receivers, number 1, number 2, number 3 to the left, number 1, number 2 to the right. In this case, you see no one in the backfield. This is a 3 by 2 arrangement because, again, we see 3 receivers here and 2 receivers here. Over here, this is 2 by 3, looking at the defense from left to right. 2 wide receivers here, or 2 eligible receivers here, 3 at the right. Again, widest being number 1, the second and number 2, 1, 2, and then finally 3 to the inside. Again, numbering eligible receivers, 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 2, 2 by 3 if you want to look at it in that way. Here's number 1, number 2 to the left-hand side of the football. Here's number 1 and number 2 here. Now, number 3 is located in the backfield, and we're going to talk a little bit about who takes him and under what conditions a little later. If we get a stack like this, this is a stack. This is obviously number 1, but then number 2 and 3 are located here. And we see this type of arrangement. We'll go with some special accommodations for it also because this guy could go this way or he could go that way. Number 2 and number 3, we might number 2 and 3 based upon where they go post-snap. Pre-snap, there's a little ambiguity here as to who number 2 and number 3 is. But here's number 1 and there's number 2. Another example here, number 1, 2 to the left, 2 to the right, and then here's number 3 in the backfield. And again, more examples of 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 3. And again, this is significant because when we play man-to-man defense, you have to know who your receiver is. And again, it's based upon a numbering technique, what number receiver you have. And the number refers to, again, their distance from the sideline. He's closest, so he's number 1. He's next in, so he's number 2. He's the furthest in, so he's number 3. Again, more examples here on numbering eligible receivers, variety of formations. here's number one, here's number two, and then here's an I formation. I formation because we have the tailback and a fullback. And we're going to look at the next slides. We'll explain to you what we do in this particular scenario. That's number one to the right. What we're going to do is we're going to split the I, meaning if we see a formation like this, this would be called a power I, because you see here's number one to the left, number two to the left, but the question is who's going to be number three. It could be this scenario where the tailback goes left, so he's number three. He goes right, so he'd be number two in the right. But we can't really determine what number of receivers they are until the ball snaps. So based upon the post-snap read, by looking at the backfield, if you had number two and three, you would have to have your eyes in the backfield to see where they go. And basically, if they come to your side, then that's eligible receiver your way. So look at this scenario. If you had number three to the left, here's one, here's two, three now becomes him, and that becomes four over here. You have to read and determine what happens after the ball snapped to determine who's number three to your side or number four to your side. Another example, again, from the power I. Here you see it a little bit different, where this becomes number three to the left, and he becomes number two to the right. And again, another scenario here and here. And again, here we have both come to the same side. Again, based on your alignment and assignment, you have to know that if they both go the same way, then we're going to have to take two here and three here. And here's the splitting of the I. Three goes one way, two goes the other way. We can even have motion. In this case, if he goes in motion, this was number one. But now since he's widened, he becomes the number one receiver, he becomes number two, and he becomes number three. So with motion, and these kinds of lines, fellas, when you see this indicates motion pre-snap. And that can change the way we number the particular formation. Here you see motion to the left, so this was number one. Now the man in motion is number one, he is number two, he becomes number three, he is number two, and he is number one going that way. So very important to get a post-snap and motion read off this. And again, we have to see what happens post-snap to identify what we're going to do in that particular case. Let's leave it at that, and we'll talk about part two and becoming an outside linebacker in the next presentation.